we all know that many times as children, we were told not to have temper tantrums. We were suppressed. And now I see this even in our own lives when I'll go to the park and or at the grocery store and I'll see a mom with their kid, and by all means I used to be this way too with my child before I kind of knew better. And she would be trying to shush her kid having his meltdown because it's embarrassing. What mom wants to kind of be like shamed from the looks of other people, right? That's kind of our upbringing against being able to feel our feels, because our parents couldn't ever express their feelings. So then they suppressed our feelings, and then we're putting it onto our kids and suppressing their feelings. And if you don't have kids, then you try to shush or suppress your friend when they are breaking down because they've been through a bad breakup, or a colleague telling them, no, it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay, when you see them quivering their lip because they are needing to express an emotion that they've been told when they were younger. And it all starts from when you're younger, right? That arena between 0 to 7 years old has been the most recognized and realized and talked about in the circles of personal growth, of personal development, that these are our formative years, our most formative years, where we have psychological imprints and soul prints of how we were supposed to be when we were younger, and also what we then carry of our belief systems and how we view and shape our worldviews as we grow into adults. But one of the missing pieces that is, well, what about our teenage years, our inner teenager? Like, what did our inner teenager want and need? I think for so many of us, we suppress our teenage years because they were difficult, because they were hard, because, gosh, if we weren't allowed to express in our childhood, then in our teenager, we were just trying to do whatever it took to get by, or what we need so that we could get the heck out of our situation and become that adult, go into that college, get the F away from what we were running from. Or maybe you had the most amazing high school experience and you didn't have any of that. And that's great. Maybe your stuff came from, your childhood. And I think for, a good portion of us, we either had to grow up so fast, like myself. I had to grow up so fast. I definitely had my bouts of being bullied in high school. I switched high schools when I was a sophomore. And, it's always tough when you're going from one school to a very large school and meeting new friends again, having new friends. I mean, I was very fortunate that I was able to make friends really fast, yet it was a really big school. So if you didn't have the clubs that you were a part of, or like for myself, I was heavily involved in dance. That was my solace. That was what made me belong and what made me accepted. And so, so many of us have these ideas and thoughts about suppressing those memories of high school. Some of the students and the participants were like, I didn't think I was going to have the most incredible breakdown that I did around high school days. And I'm just curious, the reason why I wanted to bring it up to you all is that we all always think that it's our inner child. We have to spend time with our inner child, the 4-year-old, the 5-year-old that was getting shunned. And I look at my kids, many times, and I've been guilty of this too, where I am trying to shush them up. We are at a restaurant and I'm like, okay, no, we're not going to do this right now. Nope, we're not going to melt down right now. And then it's like what you resist persists. And I think that for those parents, who struggle with this, who also struggle with maybe even having a generation of parents that live with them or that are around, because I know this is definitely a big point of contention when my in-laws are here, because they were raised to, no, don't cry, don't cry, don't cry. We don't cry. No, we don't cry in this household. So it's like nothing about crying. And then all my kids want to do is like cry and emote, and they've got big feelings. And now I'm like, all right, yes, let's do this. It's one of the reasons why I wrote the book, That Suck Now What. It's one of the reasons why I dove into full emotional release practices, embodiment practices, because I saw my 2-year-old having the biggest tantrums when we moved from LA to Austin, Texas, when I was pregnant with my second. And I felt like it was such an initiation, a portal. And then when I was going through my own bouts with postpartum depression after my daughter was born, again, it was just a testament of like, okay, I need to give this reverence. I need to give this space to breathe. I need to give the space to allow us to feel. And what are we avoiding when we are not allowed to feel? When we are avoiding our emotions, what else are we denying in ourselves to actually feel? And I just want you to listen to that for a second. Where else are we denying our capacity to feel when we are denying our emotions? And if you have children or people around you where you're trying to control their output, where are you denying yourself the ability to express? Take a deep breath, because that one's big. And I just want that to land for a second, because so often we are puppeted to think, okay, I'm going to do what society tells me to do. I'm going to do what this person wants me to do. I'm going to be how this person wants me to be because I want to feel accepted. I want to feel loved. I want to belong. And so these are the core feelings and emotions that we are carrying on as we are kids. We want to fit in. I was the third grader that wanted to fit in. I wanted to be part of that bigger group, that popular group. You're in third grade, you're 9 years old, you want to fit in. And so I remember for myself, I had a slumber party, I had a sleepover, and my parents were definitely not with it. Immigrant parents from immigrant households, they're like, wait, what is going on? Okay, sleepover. So my dad felt like he needed to patrol us, make sure we weren't doing anything, terrible. And I lived in a high-rise building, and we would throw stuff off the balcony, and it was just yeah, so we would have, our elderly neighbors come upstairs, and it was one of those things. We were naughty. We were, I definitely had that rebellious streak. And so as I'm taking you back to memory lane, were you allowed to express your feelings? Did your parents say, no, don't do that? Don't, you should be more like this. You should be more like your brother. You should be more like your sister. You should be more like that neighbor. You should be more like your cousin who always gets straight A's. And my husband, Ajit, and I, we've had conversations around this where he's like, I was never the smart one. I was always compared to my cousins, and they were always smarter than me. And I was always left to be the black sheep, like we call it now the rainbow sheep. And I know for myself, I was definitely the rainbow sheep, black sheep, brown sheep when I had rejected, I had done all of the things and rejected my career as a dentist and sold my practice. And so, did that start early on for you, or did that come up later in life? So that's one. And the next thing I kind of want to move into was the amount of people that just wanted to scream, the amount of people that just wanted permission to be witnessed. And so one of the exercises that, I took them through was this process of just being able to be seen without being judged, and that they could, for 60 seconds, because we can feel our feelings for 60 seconds, literally any emotion that you can feel, you can process it within 60 to 90 seconds. And that is truth. And so just think of when you are feeling angry today, or frustrated today, or you're judging yourself today. Notice where you actually feel that feeling. Notice, is it in your head? Is it in your chest? Is it in your body? Is it in your back? Is it, in your legs? I know I carry a lot of my tension in my jaws. Funny enough, I was a dentist. And so anytime I get body work done, I like point to my face, because I'm like, and if you can hear me right now, I'm just touching my cheeks, because I'm like, yep, it's so sore. It's so tense. And I have my body workers just work on my cheeks. It's called like a buccal release massage for the facial muscles in your face. It feels freaking amazing. But I notice that I tense that up, and I tend to grind, and I hold that tension there. And sometimes when it gets really bad, I'll feel it in my head. I'll get tension headaches. And I know so many of us, we experience that in different places in our body, but we're not really attuned to it. We don't really know. We don't really pay attention. So today, when you're going about your day, or maybe tomorrow if you're listening to this late at night, be observational. where do you hold those emotions? And where do you, if you have to bite your tongue and you're like, I wanted to say something to that person, but I have to be nice because other people are around or whatever, where do you hold that tension? Where's that first place? And just note that. And then when you get into maybe it's your car or your living room or maybe your bedroom, somewhere where you feel calm and safe and cozy, take a deep breath and just let it all out, and like full mouth, tongue out, exhale. And that's like a yoga pose. I forget the name, but to really allow yourself to let your tongue hang out of your mouth and fully release that and allow the tension to just melt along the sides of your shoulders. And it was evident that when I gave people the space to scream out what sucked, when you were 2 or 3 or 5 or 7 or 10, when you got rejected, when you weren't accepted, the first time where you had a crush, but they had a crush on somebody else. And all really we are craving for, our inner child is craving for, that little boy, that little girl is craving for, is the space to be acknowledged. And now I see this with my 2-year-old daughter, who she has a tantrum. Boy, it's like clockwork with 2-year-olds. And it's like such a gift right now. And I know I'm doing a lot of things differently than I did with my son, for sure. I mean, I literally dove into all of the parenting books and really had to reparent my inner child when my son was literally 18 months old. And his meltdowns, his tantrums started much earlier. And I'm like, okay, I am not going to pass down what my parents did to me. There's no way, no how. And Ajit and I, we had a very, it was a big conversation around what we're going to carry on. And I know for myself, I needed to reparent myself. I mean, for me, there were so many things that I had to hold in for so many years that I didn't have, my inner child grew up so fast, and I wasn't allowed to play. I wasn't allowed to emote. I wasn't allowed to have temper tantrums. So I would have temper tantrums with many of the men that I dated. And this is much later in my life, like in high school. And it's probably no wonder that I stuck with the same relationships, overlapped for years. I didn't know what the heck I was doing. I just literally wanted to be that little girl that that needed that space to express. And for some of you who are in those healthy relationships where, you're like, man, I love my partner and I am there for them and I don't judge them. But when they're having a big day, I just I encourage them, let it out. Tell me more of how you feel. Yeah, that sucked. I encourage them to go all out and fully feel and not fix them. We're not trying to fix them, right? And for those of you who are fixers, I'm a former fixer. Our friend tells us everything, and then we're like, yeah, you shouldn't be dating them. they're terrible for you. I mean, we know they're terrible, right? But they're still going to date those people anyways, and they have to go on that journey. It's kind of like when I was with my abusive ex-husband. There were so many red flags all over the place, and the closest people to me saw it all go down. And they're like, Neeta, how could we tell you? You would always defend and you were not ready until you were ready. Until, in my case, things got really bad before things got better. And, I make this joke with our friends because it's so easy and we want to fix. But most of the time, we just want space to feel heard. Most of the time, we just want space to emote without judgment. Do you have a friend right now that you can call and you can emote with them fully? I mean, and I'm an emo, emotionally express with them without feeling judged. Like, you can talk so much crap and they're going to not care because they're like, you know what? This is you just venting. Do you have a person that you can vent with, that you could just release that pressure valve and just vent? And if you don't have that friend, maybe you go outside and talk to a rock, but that can be your literal and visceral punching bag. And sometimes we just need that space to clear things out with ourselves. It's why I created a rage room in the office of my studio, of where I work. And it's great because now when the kids come over, it's like tons of pillows, it's tons of punching bags. There's even a pole in there. Don't ask me why I have a pole in my rage room. It's also to be able to kind of transmute that anger energy. It's okay. We were never given space of how to healthily process anger. And for me, I was so afraid of my anger for so many years. I was not good with anger. And I couldn't hold anybody else's anger because I couldn't hold my own because I didn't know how. And if you are in that place where you run at the sign of somebody else's anger, maybe because you have PTSD, maybe because you saw your parents get angry with each other and it was toxic. It was not healthy. So you have not been able to understand how you process, how you can actually feel the anger. You're not alone. I mean, it's one of the reasons why I created my emotional type quiz to help you figure out what your emotional type is. Are you that intense reactor where maybe when you were little, you were told that to stop being so loud, stop getting angry. We don't get angry in this house. Go to your room. So you were sent to your room to process by yourself, and you were reprimanded and you were punished for having an emotion other than having to be happy. So you were just validated on being happy. And so it's no wonder that when you get emotional and somebody is suppressing you or trying to control your emotional response, you were never given an outlet for it. And you now have an emotional reaction. You are an intense reactor. You are passionate and you get angry and you get fully alive when things don't go your way. I hear you. There's parts of me, my 13-year-old, 15-year-old, 17-year-old, 18-year-old self that wasn't allowed to fully emote because I had to have it all together. I had to be perfect. I had to be emotionally perfect. And emotional perfection is definitely a thing. It's one of those things where we have to be emotionally kept together. I think of the women that were kind of in the 50s, like all prim and proper. I think of what's that show? Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. I love that show. It's on Amazon Prime. And it takes place in the 50s, and she becomes a stand-up comedian. She's a housewife, and she's spilling out all her guts on the marriage that didn't go right, and just it's hysterical. It's so funny, and she's just brilliant. But anyways, it's this idea of like everyone in the 50s, the Mad Men era, like the wife was going to cook, clean, put the kids to sleep, and just still look good and have it all together and not be frustrated or mad or sad because she's always happy. Yeah, no, like no one ever. Where is that? How is that ever a thing? And then we moved on to like the bad bitch era, where we are in the bad bitch, and the soft era, right? Where we can be soft and we can emote and we can allow ourselves to feel. And if you are embracing this era, I am so with you on it, because this is the era that I think we're finally giving ourselves permission to reenact those days where we actually needed it the most. So my invitation is, if you struggle with this, where either you're an intense reactor, or maybe you're a people pleaser, or maybe you are a stonewaller where you are like, nope, I'm a warrior. I am constantly, I don't share my emotions with anyone. That's for me. But if something goes wrong, you go inward. You don't want to talk to anyone. You're not answering anybody's texts. You ghost, you go somewhere else. For 3 days, you disappear. And then you show up online and you're like, hey, I'm great. I'm fine. Nothing ever happened. No, I never got mad. I was just busy. You might be a stonewaller. And I invite you to take this quiz. It's theemotionalreset.com/quiz, and it's for free. And literally, it's one of the reasons why there's all different kinds of archetypes. Which personality type do we show when we get angry, or when we get upset, or when we get hurt, or when we feel like we are being threatened? What comes up? What comes out? And how do we actually deal with those different parts of ourselves? And so I'll link the quiz in the show notes as well, because I think this is going to be fabulous. And it only takes about a minute to discover what your emotional type is. And you'll find it super helpful. And you can share it with a friend. You can do it with family members. I know that for myself, I definitely go between people pleaser and stonewaller. And for my husband, he is the sensitive receiver, and he is also the like toxic positivity warrior, believe it or not. And we have different sides to us. And that toxic positivity warrior is like, nope, always looking on the brighter side. There's always the brighter side of things. Like nothing ever rolls off of his back, as there's always a brighter side to things, right? But there's also toxicity in that. Can we talk about that and how much of that burden and pressure it must feel, to be in that way, and to actually, if you are the one that constantly holds things for your family, holds things for people around you, holds things for your community, where are you able to express and let go and express your frustration, express your hurt, express your anger? And some of you may already have healthy ways of doing that, and that might be going to the gym, or that's why you take boxing classes, or that's why you sing. That's why you have your time of going out and spending time with nature, in nature, or maybe you take a warm bath. I mean, I have all of these amazing emotional regulation tools. And, the final thing that I wanted to say is, when we took folks into the container of expressing their teenage rage and allowing ourselves to get angry, if we get angry as women, right, we are known as batshit crazy. If we get angry, and you see that meme of the woman losing her, SHIT on her kids at the grocery store when somebody cuts her in line, she is probably having a lot of pent up frustration and resentment and anger. And where does it go? Right? We then spill it over onto our kids, for sure, or the closest people to us, like our best girlfriends, or our partners, or our loved ones, like our elderly family members, our parents. So where can you healthily let that anger go? And I was so surprised when I took them through this exercise, how much screaming and yelling and stomping and shaking and dancing and jumping up and down and rolling, over there was. And if you are not doing that, I invite you to literally take my emotional type quiz, because it will give you a couple of different ways to emotionally release some of these pent up emotions in a safe and healthy way, where we're not taking it out and word vomiting on the closest people to us, because that just means that we're not able to, regulate ourselves. And hey, it's, we all go through this, and it is hard for so many of us because we've never given the space to. Right? We were told you had to be the good girl. You had to be just like everyone else. You have to be fill in the blank of what your thing was. I know for myself, it was you're the strong one, you were resilient, and so for so many years, I was not only toxically positive, I was not okay with my anger. I was not okay with even crying. I was not okay with any of the big, intense emotions, where I'm so glad those rage rooms exist, where you go and you throw stuff and it breaks. And if you've ever never been to one, I highly recommend that, or just create one in your safe space where you can express, So I wanted to close this up today with one of my that sucked now what affirmation cards. So here's our affirmation today. As I close this, I release my urge to force anything to happen. I trust with timing it will all work out perfectly. I surrender to my flow with the universe. And your action step today is schedule a completely free day this week. Ooh, this sounds juicy. No to to-do lists, no to appointments, a day where you are completely clear of your calendar and saying yes to anything that comes your way. Ooh, so unplanned opportunities and actions. Well, you guys, this has been amazing. And I am so, so thankful that you have tuned in. And I will see you next time. Don't forget to be just a little bit more brave.